Alright, so this is Black to Fall. It's one of those kind of puzzle platformer games, kind of like Limbo or Inside. Visually, it reminds me a lot of Inside, but it plays a little bit differently if you've played those before or any of these similar type of games. But let's just get through the walkthrough. So basically, you just start off, jump. Sprint jumping is the quickest way to move, so that'll be a large portion of the game. You ride the bike for just enough piston hits to bring out that like hot bolt thing, and then that'll fall in the cart and move the cart. Once the cart opens up the door like halfway, you can go ahead and start jumping. This next section doesn't really have a skip yet, although it would be great if it did. Um, Unfortunately, you just kind of got to wait it out, and it's pretty straightforward. You just wait for that big box to block the light, and then the scanner doesn't get you. Then you just kind of hop by it. Here you just get 3 sprint jumps to the right, turn around, jump back left, climb up, turn the valve, and that shuts off the fire that's just to the right. When you jump off, you get like a tiny little cutscene, and you just can just hold sprint, jump to the right. And then once you get control, this next part, it depends on what cycle you get. It's RNG based as far as I know. The big overall one is like the best cycle where the guard is looking down and immediately goes to push that guy inside the room. The top left bit of gameplay is like the second best option where he isn't looking down, but it's pretty quickly after you get to the little seesaw thing where he does his animation. And then the top right is just like the worst case scenario where you just gotta wait for forever for him to turn around. The next section can be done multiple ways. You can go all the way up top and jump through the top piece of glass. You can go all the way to the bottom. There's also a kind of a skip, and that's the big overall, where if you turn that crank on the left about 1 3/4, it'll get you just at the right height where you can break the top and the middle panes of glass. And then this will kind of confuse that robot that like has a scanner, and it allows you to jump over that and just skip this whole little bike puzzle section. And so that's the optimal thing. It's kind of weird and sometimes doesn't work. If not, I would recommend going up and breaking the top pin glass. But if you do that and you don't make the jump, you die and have to do that whole puzzle again. So um, breaking the top and middle is the fastest way. Breaking the top is like the next fastest, and going on the bottom is the safe but slowest option. So if you don't have to do that little bike section, you just kind of stay on that until the laser goes by you or the scanner, and then you're good to go and just sneak past that guard with the bucket. Here's another skip that's kind of a pain in the butt because it doesn't always work. You can jump past that little gap, and it's pretty much like a sprint jump and then immediately crouch. It is really annoying to get, but it does save quite a bit of time. You get to skip one of the machine gun cycles, so obviously you can see the difference. But it is, as far as I know, there's no like perfect way. Like if you jump here, you always make it. It's kind of hit or miss. So, take that into account. This next part, you pretty much just hold sprint and jump, and then crush this guy and take his little mind control device. So besides the jumping, the sprinting, this little mind control thing is basically what you're working with the rest of the game. So you just control this guy and kind of like prep him to go right. So while he's moving, you're kind of moving too. You can open the door, and then as the door is opening, just kind of go ahead and prep the next hit. So once he's able to, he'll just kind of walk under it and just be a little bit closer. So this is another puzzle you can do a couple different ways. There's a kind of this weird mechanic where if you back into some objects with your mind control device pointing the other direction and jump, it'll like propel you up like you just saw. So we can use that to kind of do this puzzle a different way. The top left will be kind of like how you're, I guess, supposed to do it normally. But instead of like re-controlling this guy and having him open the switch on the far right, we're just gonna kind of run through once this little thing in the middle opens up, kind of our safety from the gas. You can run through. If you trigger the laser, it's fine. He'll just kind of like blink at you, and then you Hold the mind control to the left, walk backwards to the right, and then jump once you hit the wall, and it'll propel you up. So then you see the difference of how much time that saves. Here you just kind of crouch past this guy. At a certain point, you can jump and he won't see you. We do take an intentional death here and just quickly respawn it, and then just crouch. And then there's a way to get into this elevator coming up a little bit quicker. It's kind of risky because if you miss it and mistime it, you will die and have to do this part over again. But you can immediately trigger the elevator and then just kind of like slip in that little hole right there. Again, it saves maybe a second or two, so do that at your own risk. But this next little puzzle is pretty straightforward. I like to kind of set that guy up to move a little to the right as you're doing other things, and then just keep going right once you have him controlled. You can stop the projector a little bit early. You don't have to let it run all the way to the right. So basically, as long as that back tire is over that little kind of silver part and right past the sign on the bottom, it will project onto the screen. Here I set up at the very edge of this like walkway and do a sprint jump and immediately into a crouch. There's like a little rock down there that I use as a guide, and once I get to that, I can just sprint jump 2 jumps to the edge and climb up. This next puzzle you can do multiple ways, but the quickest way is just to grab this first guy and then get the laser to kind of target you. It'll get focused on the other guy instead, and then you run past that, and then that third bike guy that you initially got to trigger the laser, you just send him to the very end, get the other guy off the bike, and send him to the very end. It's pretty straightforward, but it's a nice if you can like kind of one cycle that and not have to wait at all. This next part is pretty straightforward. I don't think there's a skip for this one yet, although it would be awesome if you could just somehow not have to do any of this because it's a slow one. So it's pretty straightforward. You just grab the guy, get him on the switch, wait for the switch, get the other switch. I like to stop that top pipe about where it's at right now just to make sure you have enough to get to the next switch. If you stop it a little too early, you won't be able to bounce your beam off of it correctly, and that can be kind of a pain in the butt. So as long as you stop that top piece at the right spot, you should be good. Watch that gap on that little in-between section. It can get you. This part isn't too bad. It's the jump at the very end that can be kind of tricky sometimes. I don't know why, but the game like eats your jump sometimes, so just be careful. I try to wait for that like line of fire that you see on the right. When it's kind of in line with the pipes is when I kind of start to run and then jump at the like pretty much the last second. You could probably jump a little earlier, but I'm always scared I'm just gonna miss the pipes. Here, if you do like a little bit of a delayed jump off the end of that pipe, you don't have to climb up. And that's another thing that helps out some in the run later on. We'll see it. If you can time it so that you don't have to pull yourself up, and that's what can happen where it just like eats your jump for some reason. If you don't have to pull yourself up, you save time. Here we're gonna do that weird backing up trick to just like clip straight through the door. The top left is what you usually do. You just wait for it, so it saves a little bit of time. It's not the end of the world if you don't do it, but it's nice. You can just walk right through it and just keep on going. And that whole section, if you just hold sprint, jump, and right, it lines up perfectly. You don't really have to actually like do anything. He'll jump and climb up all the stuff, no problem. Next part is pretty straightforward. Fortunately, you can't do that weird wall jump trick to get through this room, so you get the door to kind of fall and open that section at the top, jump over, and then just move the laser over. This next part is you just got to kind of time it out right. You have to wait for this guard to walk far enough right. He does like a little pause, and then I count, I think 5 steps. So pause, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I start moving. If you go earlier than that, chances are he will see you. So then you kind of bait him with that trapdoor, move the laser over, and then just kind of sprint and jump out of the room before anything else. This next puzzle you can do multiple ways. You can in fact jump down and engage the elevator from below. Um, the top left will be like the way you usually do it. The quick elevator, if you get it quickly enough and hit it like immediately, you can one cycle this bit where you don't die by the lasers, but it's really close. I barely made it that one. So if you die, it just kind of starts you back right where you are, so it's not a big time loss, but yeah, you just want to be like bang bang with the elevator, bringing it down the first try. So this one obviously saves time over doing the puzzle normally. As you can see, you have to bring that like reflective thing across to the right and then climb back up. You have to put the mind control device in and out. So even if you don't one cycle the elevator and you die to the lasers, it's still much quicker than doing the puzzle normally. There will be a skip in the next room where you don't have to crank this like crank bridge. It's mainly just finding a spot that works for you. I kind of try and line it up with that little crank to circle at the end of the mind control device, and if you just hold sprint and jump to the right, it usually makes it over, but it is a little iffy, so it doesn't save a whole lot of time, but it is kind of cool. It's something to do, I guess. This next part's pretty straightforward. There's a couple ways that you can kind of tackle the puzzle, but I don't think they really influence how quickly you get through it. But you start off basic, just turn this so it's on the door to the left. You climb up and you'll jump over this. Be careful not to jump too early because that laser is kind of a pain. Once you re-grab your arm is where the kind of like the two different ways to do the puzzle come into play. So you get the big video where you just kind of run through and then just use your mind control device to hit that button up top to reset the laser, or you can climb up, wait for the laser to go, and just kind of fall behind it. I think you get more time with the overall using the laser up top. You reset the laser wall, but it's just a preference thing. How risky you feel like playing, I guess. Here you can just hold sprint, jump, and right, and he will make all the jumps fine. You don't have to really do anything. You can preemptively hit this next elevator a little early and just kind of run into it like the one before. You have, I think, more leeway on this one, so it's not as much of a risk. And at least for the PS4 version, there's like a little bit of a lag before it, so it kind of helps you get the timing right. I didn't mention this before, but this is the PS4 version of the game. I know the Switch is definitely different, especially in between puzzles, but I think some of the puzzles are slightly different spacing. I believe the PC version also has slight variations on the PS4 version, where some of the puzzles, like the spacing in them, are kind of weird. Here you're just pretty much jumping and trying to make it to the top here. Once you turn that valve, the cutscene starts. When the cutscene ends, you are going to be going to the left and dropping down a hole. And once you drop down, you're going to be like on this little platform over some lava, and you're just going to, there's another crank that you use to move the little platform to the right. You can stop the platform a little early. I think it's 5 cranks and like a little bit of the 6th one, but not a full crank. And then you just kind of do a sprint jump, or like a delayed sprint jump, so you get the maximum distance. And you can either make the jump completely, or if you have to pull yourself up, so be it. This next section is just kind of to show the difference between timing your jumps properly so you don't have to pull yourself up the ledges, and how much time that could save. It's a little bit risky, but it does save a couple seconds. So the rest of this is pretty straightforward. You jump across there. Here you can just jump across. When you climb up, you just go immediately to the left and just keep holding jump and sprint to the left. Once you get up on the top walkway, you can't hold jump and sprint to the left because the timing doesn't work out. So just keep that in mind. You got to time that last jump. If you just hold sprint and jump, you're gonna fall through the hole right there between the walkways. So here you just wait out this little crusher, jump up top, and you're good to go. When the compactor like opens up, the floor opens up, you just drop through that. Pretty straightforward. Like most of these puzzle solutions are, it's how you do the game anyway, so it's a lot of it's just common sense. Jump here. Once it moves a little bit, you should be good to go. I waited extra long on that one, but you don't usually have to wait quite that long. But better to be safe than sorry. So this next piece, or next part coming up, you can just kind of hold sprint, jump into the right, and the timing will work out. There is a big skip here, and the overall video will show the huge skip, where basically you jump into the end of this red hot thing at the very last second, and somehow that puts you on the other side of the puzzle. So as you can see, it's a huge time save over doing the puzzle normally. Otherwise you have to hit that switch, it shoots out that like piston all the way, and then once you make it across, you can drop down if you do the skip, and so you save even more time doing it that way. Because if you don't do the skip, then you have to wait for the platform to land on, because there is no like invisible floor to drop down to. This next part is pretty annoying. There's no real like good way to describe what to do. You just kind of figure out your best patterns and listen to the steam. Once you get past that third group of steam, you know you're kind of good to go. So once you're outside, you can just kind of hold sprint, jump into the right. You can get pretty close to the Metal Gear looking thing coming up. I try and get to that point before I crouch. I think if you go any further, he will spot you, turn around and shoot you, and then that puts you all the way back at like escaping. So yeah, just be careful not to get shot. Actually, you might not go all the way back, but it's still a time loss, obviously. Any deaths that aren't intentional. Here you climb up. I think this is one of the puzzles where there's a difference between the Switch and PC versions. The little raft down here is tied up on the PS4 version, so you have to climb all the way up to the top of the roof and use that momentum to break the string or the rope. Here, just be careful in your spacing with the jumps. I would die there a lot when I first was running the game, so it can be kind of tricky because you have to kind of delay your jumps on that second group of barrels. So you don't have to wait for this little boat thing to get all the way to the left. I like to, if you set up a visual cue, whatever works for you, and figure out how close you can get the boat before you miss it and fall in the water. But this is kind of where I pull out the mind control device and then sprint, jump over, and just do a little bit of a delayed jump to get over the water and make it onto the boat. This next section is just, I don't know if there's like a good, solid, works every time way to do this, but I basically just try and get as close as I can and use the little boathouse to protect me from the scanners. And just try and be as quick as possible getting your mind control device back on that little button to keep the boat moving. You can get at a specific spot and use those little like window pane bits to block the lasers. I didn't get it to work in this video, but it is possible. I know the last two, I think you can get, or not this very last one, but the two before it, you can skip those, but they're hit or miss. So don't expect it to happen. Be ready to crouch and hide behind a little boathouse, but you can potentially save a little bit of time by sneaking past those scanners. So now we get to see our little robot buddy who will be helping out for the rest of the run. We will use the robot a couple spots to kind of clip through some items, but for the most part, it's just play the game normally. So do this normal, use him to get over the wall, open the gate, and then the main thing for the robot is to remember to get him out of step stool mode if you put him into that, because he will not follow you if you do not kind of put him back down to normal. So there has been plenty of runs where I've forgotten to put him back into like normal mode, and then you run down and then realize he's not following you because he's still in the step stool mode or whatever you want to call it. So just keep that in mind. Pretty basic, straightforward here. Just do this. Sometimes he won't jump up on that blue thing with the first hit, and you just gotta like re-engage that. You can time it so that you make him jump off the blue switch and you can jump before getting crushed. I think that's kind of how you do it normally anyway, but alright, so there's a couple different ways to do this next part. They don't actually speed up anything, but it's just something to do. Kind of that weird mechanic where you can jump up walls and stuff. You can use that to actually climb up the left side of this like compactor area. Since you still have to wait for the boxes in the next bit, it doesn't actually save time because you're still waiting on the same cycles, but it's just kind of funny to do and a little different. Sometimes the robot doesn't come up when you do the weird movement up the wall. See, the box is still in the same spot, so you still have to wait anyway, but yeah, you want to make sure the robot is following you here. If it doesn't follow you, wait until you do this whole section and just either get the guard to see you and kill you, or get crushed by the big yellow thing, because you'll need to reset the robot. But ideally, he will follow you, and you can just do the next section like normal without having to intentionally take a death to reset everything. And this will be where one of the kind of like the robot clips, whatever you want to call it, comes into play. You do the puzzle like normal, and then when you send him to the blue switch that's on the wall coming up, you'll see it in just a second. You stand against the wall and let the robot kind of jump above you, and then it's weird to describe, but you kind of slightly walk to the left and jump, and you'll see the main character's hands kind of come up like he's against a wall. It's like an invisible wall, and then if you keep jumping, it should like force you through the big wall instead of having to climb up over the robot, climb up over the wall. So we'll see in a second. And this is just a comparison of the two. So you get the robot to jump up, kind of walk towards it, jump, and it just like pushes you through it. So sometimes it gets a little finicky and it doesn't always like work the first time, but I think even if it takes a second or third try, it still saves a little bit, or it's just about the same as doing the puzzle normally and climbing up over the wall. This section just kind of sucks. Just got to be decent with your robot placement and try to make these jumps. The jumps can be as equally frustrating as the robot placement, so keep that in mind. This next part, you can do this whole section in one cycle if you time it correctly. So basically on the fourth shot from the Metal Gear, you can start sprint jumping to the right. You take a little bit of a pause here so he gets distracted by the birds, and then you just keep jumping to the right. You don't have a whole lot of leeway, so it's a little iffy in that middle section with the birds. If you don't sprint jump to the right quickly enough, he will kind of see you as you're making your way across that teeter-totter thing. But worst case scenario, you you get killed and you have to break it up into like 2 sections. But you can one cycle that whole area. Otherwise, you just basically do it like normal, where you use the robot to distract them with the birds and yada yada yada. I'm sure you've done it the normal way or seen somebody do it, and that's a fine way to do it as well. It's a lot safer, but this puzzle is pretty much the same way as intended. I don't think there's really a skip for this one yet. I was hoping maybe you could like jump across the fire or not have to use the bucket, but you still have to bring up the water for the robot anyway. So not much you can do, but just kind of do it like normal as of now. And hopefully more skips will be found for the game in some of the slower areas. But for the time being, this is about as fast as it is currently, I think. I don't know if anybody else has found faster strats, but hopefully one day. So yeah, just hold sprint, jump into the right. There's this one little section with the water. That little bit of water will kill you, so just make sure you jump over that. It's kind of a pain. This boat section can be done kind of 2 different ways. The quickest way is to use get the robot to jump back left before the little raft falls, and then use his momentum of getting back on the raft to propel you just far enough. It's a little iffy. You got to go like as far as you can, or else you won't make that final jump. And it's just a few seconds quicker than doing the kind of the normal way of getting the robot to move you left, and then you both jump on the raft and use that momentum. But just a slightly quick way to do that. You're just sprint jumping here. Yeah, like a good 50% of this game is just holding sprint jump into whatever direction you're trying to go. So I think the next puzzle is pretty straightforward too. I think it's the water tank one. Yeah. So you kind of go all the way to the right. You get the robot to climb onto this thing, and while he's doing that, you turn the valve and bring the water up so that the water is like just about ready to go once you close the other side. Just wait like a few seconds. Once the water starts pouring out, you want to make sure that fire is out before you try and jump. I wish there was a way you could just jump over the fire, but as of now, there's no skip for that little puzzle. So this next puzzle, once you finally make your way all the way across, there's kind of a way you can get the robot on without having to do like the normal strat. You crank that to get the steam just to push that board up, and then there's like this little spot if you stand all the way against the wall where you can get the robot up without having to go all the way left and then use the mind control device. So as you can see, that saves just a couple seconds. If you struggle to find that like sweet spot where you can get the robot to go up on the teeter-totter wood piece, you can lose a little bit of time, I guess, but it's not going to be a whole lot either way. It's a pretty straightforward, pretty quick puzzle, so more just something to do than to actually save any valuable time. So this next little bit with the robot, there is a robot clip you can get. It's a lot easier to get in Switch, funny enough, because on the Switch version, a bunch of these skips don't work. So it's actually like the worst version. If you have the game on the Switch, you can still do most of the stuff, but like the big skip inside with the piston that comes like horizontally, I don't think you can do that on Switch. But these robot clips seem to be a lot easier on Switch for some reason. They are possible, I think, on console. I'm not sure about PC. I don't have that version. But yeah, usually that first one with the crusher that crushes the guard is like your go-to, and then the other ones, if they happen, cool. If not, it's no big deal. This one's pretty straightforward. It's just kind of doing it as quickly as possible. Just getting the robot on that little moving piston in the middle is usually the hardest part. You can jump off this kind of early. Once it gets past a certain point, the gates like won't shut, so you can get a little bit of a head start. But that's about the only difference. And then just timing this correctly so that you get the robot on there and then jump across, no problem. So ride this out just like normal. And then it's just going to be a lot of sprint jumping to the right after this. For the wrecking ball puzzle, unfortunately, there is no skip for that one yet. I still think it's possible to somehow use the robot to break through the door, and then as the wrecking ball is moving, I feel like you can sneak under there somehow, but the timing would have to be so precise if it even is possible. So for now, unfortunately, you just kind of got to do the puzzle normally. You can also jump up on the wrecking ball using some like weird walking backwards type of glitch, but unfortunately that doesn't really do anything. You can't actually go anywhere or do anything useful on top of the wrecking ball because you can get on top of it when it's like held up in place right there. But yeah, I don't think there's not anything found as of yet that is useful. So instead, you just kind of wait here. Um, you can go pretty early. You don't have to wait for the wrecking ball to be all the way up. I found, and you'll have to kind of like play around with it to find your sweet spot, but that's about as early as I want to go under the wrecking ball. If you go too early, of course, you hit the wrecking ball and it kills you, and then you have to do the whole thing over again. So it's a little risky to try and squeeze out a second, but do it. Do it if you want to save a little bit of time. This part's straightforward. Just do the puzzle like normal. Just get the robot across. Just have him hop on that little blue switch first, and then immediately go to the piston that rises up, so that he blocks the lasers for you. The part after this can be done a couple different ways. There's a kind of a quick way, but it's a lot riskier. I'll usually, if the laser pattern isn't good, I'll go ahead and take an intentional death to kind of reset that, because you want it to be on the far right. I don't know if it really saves that much time, but so the big video is the quickest way, where you can use that overhang to lose the laser, and then you can move the robot. The top right corner is how you kind of normally do the puzzle. So you see you save a little bit of time by not having to wait for the laser to kind of lose you and disengage. But the quick way is a little bit riskier, and you have to find like a sweet spot for the robot to be on the left side under the overhang, where the laser or the scanner like loses the robot, and then hope that it doesn't pick him back up once he runs out from under the overhang, which has happened plenty of times. So keep that in mind. It's quicker, but it also is more risky. So here we do the old walk backwards with the mind control device out trick to skip how you normally do this puzzle, which you can see in the bottom left. So if you kind of just wait for the crusher to come back down, walk backwards into it, you clip into it, and you can just kind of run through this like it's not even there. So otherwise, you just kind of do the puzzle like normal. There is a way to get the robot to stop that gear at a like perfect spots where you can run through this part, but it's pretty tough to get it at like just the right spot and to ensure that you can get through there. So just clip through that crushing part and it's a lot easier. Just make sure you get through that section before it comes back down and kills you, because if you kind of lollygag in there, it will get you. So yep, just another normal puzzle right here. Just do this like normal. The part right after this is where I sometimes forget to unstep stool the robot, because you need him to break open the wood, and then sometimes I forget to do that right there. So don't do that. Remember to bring your robot with you. I think this next part's pretty much like it's intended. I don't really remember how this is supposed to go, but there's pretty much only one way to get through here, as far as I know. So you kind of bait the turret there with the robot, and then as it's coming across, you jump across on top of the nest. I like to get the robot going right, just to like have him a little bit further to the right. So this is another one where sometimes you can clip through this wall. Yeah, I didn't get it. It's no big deal if you don't. You just climb up like normal. I think this one's more has to do with like how the robot jumps and the timing with you going against the wall. All right, so the bus skip is not a huge time save, but it does save some time. If there was a quicker way to set it up without having to take an intentional death, it would save a lot more time. But as of now, the only way I know how to do it is to kind of like reset for the death. And what you do is you jump, sprint jump 3 times, and then just kind of like use the trigger a bunch. For some reason that like freaks out the laser or the scanner, and it allows you to just run right through. So in the top left corner, you see how like the normal bus cutscene is going on, and then the bigger overall video is the bus skip, and you just keep run, jump, sprinting to the right. The camera kind of shifts, and then it finally comes to a standstill. Basically, you go to that little patch down there in the road and kind of like just wait it out, and then you'll immediately go to the next part. So it saves a little bit of time. Again, if there was some way to set it up where you don't have to take that intentional death, it would save even more time. But yeah, that'll bring you to this part where you just, if you start right, I think it's one less time you have to swing. So do a full swing to the right and then go back left and just keep going back and forth. Because you touch the pipe on that swing and then break through it on the next one. And then basically here on out, there's not really much you do differently. There's one part where you take an intentional death to kind of speed up a cycle of lasers or scanners. And then when you drop what I'm assuming are shoes, but when you drop the objects from a puzzle later on, you can jump earlier than you probably think you might be able to. But otherwise, it's just play the game like normal for this last like 4 or 5 minutes. And if you're on PS4, here's where you hope that the game doesn't crash at the very end, because for some reason, I don't know if the other versions are the same, but the PS4 likes to crash like right at the very end. Or sometimes when you get inside the Metal Gear, it won't break through the wall. That's happened a couple of times, so you're just praying that you're at the pretty much the end of the run, and you're just hoping that the game doesn't screw up. All right, so here's the intentional death to kind of speed up a cycle. It doesn't save a whole lot of time, but it does save a little bit, and it's pretty free, so like why not go for it? So basically, you just walk all the way to the right here and die under this laser or the scanner, and that'll bring the scanner up behind you, past you, instead of having to wait under the little overhang and using the shadow to protect you. So as you can see, it just speeds up ever so slightly. But hey, if you can save a few seconds, why not? There's not much you have to do, so. Alright, and then you just climb up the pipe, kind of like normal. Climb up on the robot, scanner robot thing. Now, you can drop, I guess, technically a little early, as long as you make it past that scanner that's looking down. You don't want to get in the red light, obviously, so just drop out of sight of that, and you can just kind of limp sprint, because you don't have like a full sprint, but you can still move quickly while you're like disabled, and you can do that to kind of catch up, because you move quicker than the scanner, that moving scanner moves, so you might as well. But it's not the end of the world. And then this is the section where you don't have to wait for the whatever objects those are to drop the whole way. you can jump up to the platform before all the objects like stop coming out of that chute. So once you flip the switch, you kind of like line yourself up in the middle of the pile, and you'll kind of have to figure out when to jump. But if you hold sprint and jump and kind of like go to the right, you can make it up. So if there's some way to like a visual cue that works for you, I usually jump a little too early and then just have to jump again. But that one was first jump, so you'll see what you're trying to get is to get off screen before all the stuff falls out of the chute. That's when you know you got a really good one. Um, so that one could have been a little bit quicker, but it's still saving a little bit of time instead of having to wait for all the what I'm assuming are shoes. I'm not 100% sure. Whatever those objects are, you don't have to wait for them to fall all the way out. I wish there was a skip for this little section, but until there is, just kind of wait out in the coffin like normal. You do not want to take a death at the very end here when you don't need to, obviously. But it does feel extra slow when you have to just wait and wait. You know you're at the very last bit of the game, and your movement speed is slower. The puzzles are pretty straightforward. They're not really intricate like the other ones had been. So you're just trying to get through the end of the game without, in my case, without the game crashing or without taking up like a stupid death, just because you don't have to focus quite as much at the end game of the run. So that's basically it for the run. You get into this Metal Gear out in the yard and use it to break through the wall. Again, on PS4, I don't know about the other versions, but sometimes the Metal Gear robot thing won't break through the wall, and I don't think there's anything you can do except like restart the checkpoint. So as long as that doesn't happen, and as long as the game doesn't crash, that's pretty much the end of the game. Once you break through the wall, you will be in like the credits and in photograph section of the game, where you just hold sprint, jump into the right, and then time ends once you go off screen and it fades to black. Oh yeah, and time starts when you first select that first like chapter or whatever you want to call those the sections, because the whole game's kind of broken up into the pieces that you can select between. They're not really chapters necessarily, but it does help for practicing the game. You can go to specific sections of the game and do those over and over if you need to. But yeah, either start a new game or just pick that opening kind of cutscene thing, and that's when time starts. When you click that, and time ends once you run all the way off the screen in the next part, and everything fades to black. So luckily the game didn't crash on me here, and you just kind of keep going up against the wall until it breaks. Get like a mini cutscene before getting into the Metal Gear, and then it just kind of fades to black here, and then loads back in the kind of credits section of the game. And then it's just a literal sprint to the finish. So, no tricks here, unfortunately. I think in the PC version, maybe the Switch version, your little robot friend comes back and he's running along with you, so that's kind of cool. But other than that, yep, that's pretty much it. So that's a Black the Fall run. As far as it is right now, at least. Hopefully there'll be some more skips or something found in the future, but until then, hope you enjoy the game.